to my show and to day 11 of the 30-day challenge, the 9/11 day as well. So I'm not going to be talking about that tonight. I want to talk about the second element of my pep talk approach to outstanding speaking. This is the formula. I talked about this on Sunday. So we talked about passion yesterday. Today it's about speaking from experience, and that's really the key. Now, if you've joined Toastmasters at any stage or been involved in Toastmasters, which I do highly recommend, you'll get a manual, and the first speech in the manual is called the icebreaker. And what you're required to do in the icebreaker speech is literally just talk about your life, introduce yourself to the members of the club. And the best way to do that is quite simply that you pick 2 or 3 things that are connected from your life and you tell stories about your life. It's that simple. It's the easiest way to get up and speak to a group of people. The thing about speaking from experience is that you don't really have to remember and memorize speeches. You're talking about stories and experiences of things that happened in your life, and they're burned into our memories. These are almost certainly going to be important moments in your life, times when you have a very strong memory of what happened. You might need to do a little bit of work to structure it. Sometimes those stories are a bit too long and you've got to condense them down into something that's a little bit more manageable. Sometimes you've got to slightly play with the order of things to make it come across better as a story. But largely, that's the most important thing to do. See, if I go to a conference, I don't want to hear what people have read from a book, because actually I'd rather read the original book. I don't want to hear about somebody else's stories, about stuff that another speaker talks about. I'd rather listen to the other speaker, because they are telling it from their heart. They're telling it from their personal experiences. If I'm listening to you speaking, if I'm listening to you putting across some messages, I want to hear your personal experiences, your life experiences. I want to know what you went through. And those stories are probably going to be really good stories. Now, one of the challenges that I've found is that people think they haven't got anything to say. Now, here's the important thing. In order to get up and speak, you have to have earned the right to speak. You've got to be there. You have to have the T-shirt. You've got to have done it. I've been to conferences in my past when people were talking about sales, and I could tell within 5 or 10 minutes of just listening to them, I thought, this person hasn't done this. This is something they've got from a book. This is something they've heard about. This is something they tried once or twice, but they've not really had all that experience. Yeah, if I want to listen to a travel story, I want to listen to somebody who's actually traveled and really knows what it's like. And they will tell me things in those stories which indicate to me clearly that they have been there. And it'll be missing if you haven't appreciated it, haven't been there. So the whole element of everything that we're doing in speaking from experience is to draw on stories from your life. So this is the big element of speaking. Really is so important. Now, we talked about passion yesterday. If you didn't enjoy this, if it wasn't something you really wanted to do, it won't have the passion, it won't have the energy, it won't have the excitement, it won't engage the audience. But when we get to the content has to come from your life experiences or your expertise, things that you have learned a lot about. I was an expert in financial services for years, but I had a degree in it. I'd worked in it for 25 years. I did talks about elements of financial services, but I knew it inside out. I remember the very first speech I did, which was about understanding mortgages. I had written training manuals on this. I had studied it in my exams for my degree. I really did understand and know it. My hard task was taking that body of knowledge and concentrating it down to something that was easy for someone to understand who had no experience at all. That was the challenge for me. But I had the knowledge, I had all the experience, and I could draw on it. And if anybody threw a question at me, I'd be able to answer those questions. And that's the other element. Now, with that knowledge and that experience, you don't get your nerves aren't a problem. Because you know the topic, you haven't got to think about and try and remember what you're trying to say. It's there. You're going to rely on a PowerPoint presentation or rely on notes. You go with your story. I write notes down to when I'm doing a speech, and sometimes it's just a single line. And it's the single line which reminds me, this is the story I'm going to be telling. Now, I might make a point, I might quote some facts, I might show a slide, and then I'll go into a story to illustrate this and to get the story across, because I know that people will remember my stories better, and they will remember those experiences better than a load of facts. So in terms of looking for this, you just look right through your life and start searching out for your stories from your life, your general life experience. What have you learned as you've gone through life that's worth sharing, that can be useful, that people would like to understand? And often when you think about storytelling, I will be looking at storytelling as a separate item, but think about the conflicts, the challenges you've had to overcome, because that's the challenges other people are having to face. And that's what they want to know about. They'd like to know, how did you overcome that? How did you tackle that difficulty? How did you get through that? So think about your work. What have you learned from your work that you can share with other people? Your hobbies, your social life, traveling, volunteering, education. All of these things are rich with experiences that other people want to know about. And that's what you've got to share. Think about all of those stories. I was doing a public speaking workshop some years ago, and I had a woman on that came on the course, and one of the exercises was I wanted somebody to tell a story from their personal experiences, from their life. I was looking at speak from experience, and I wanted them to tell a story about something in their life. And this woman said, but nothing ever happens in my life. I've got a very boring life. Nothing. I haven't got anything I can say. There's no story. And she finally came up and did something, but it was really quite weak. It wasn't really a story from her life. She was struggling to find a story. And then over coffee, I was listening to her talking to her friends talking to other people on the course about where she'd been on holiday. She had just come back from a trekking holiday in the Peruvian Andes. I said, why didn't you talk about that? She said, well, it was just a holiday. I said, no, it's a dream. There are people here who dream about the idea of going to Peru to trek through the Andes. I would love to have heard your stories and your experiences and your encounters on that expedition. And I still don't think she ever got it properly, but that's the key. Lots of things about your life are really fascinating and interesting. And I know I sit down with people and talk about just their life when they were at school, their lives at work. And I'm fascinated because these are all experiences that I've never had. It's all about life I've never shared. So I like to know about it. I like to know about those encounters. And when I do my workshops, it's pretty much all about the stories. One of the most powerful stories ever delivered for the TEDx conferences was by Brian Stevenson. When I say powerful, it was the most successful in terms of the most persuasive speech. At the end of his speech to the main TED conference, the audience, without being asked to, donated over $1 million to his social enterprise. And that was all about the power of his personal stories and his experiences. He was in social justice in a business. He helped young people to cope with the challenges of growing up in, I think it was Chicago. And those stories really inspired people to put money in and invest money and donate money into his social enterprise. It's your stories that make a difference. It's your experiences we want to hear about. So just remember, speak from experience. Speak about a topic about which you've earned the right to speak. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow.